Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar for the full stage of the second round of the UKRI Cross Research Council Responsive Mode Pilot Scheme. My name is Alex Amy, and I am the strategic lead for the programme. In today's webinar, we're going to cover submitting your application to the funding service and the assessment journey for your full stage application, and then also what assessors are looking for in your application and how you can demonstrate this with a particular focus on the interdisciplinary aspects of your proposal. And then the assessment process for the full stage applications, and in particular the project lead response stage and what you will receive and how to respond. And then a quick reminder of the important dates, and then we should have about 10 to 15 minutes for any questions you have. If you do have questions, please do post these in the Q&A function, but please do wait to see if we cover it in the presentation itself so we can focus on those questions we might not have answered. There are members of the team behind the scenes who will be working on answering some of those questions online, but we will also pick up some of them live after the presentations. We will also be sending out a copy of today's slides and will include the questions and answers from both webinars that we are running, including those that we don't have time to answer today. So I would like to introduce you to the team behind the scheme that you will have probably received communications from as part of the process so far. So joining me in the presentations this afternoon is Jenny Morris and Hilary McNeil, our two senior programme managers. And supporting us is a fantastic team, helping to make the webinar run smoothly and also really key in processing all the applications. I would just like to end my introduction section by saying congratulations on making it through to the next stage. The scheme has been very competitive so far, and less than 20% of applications made it through to the full stage for round 2. All outline applications invited to the full stage were judged to be of a high standard with good alignment with the scheme objectives. As explained in your invitation emails, we are unable to provide specific feedback for the outline applications due to the sheer volume we received. But for round 2, we have trialled using some pre-written statements that the panel could choose from to provide applicants with further clarification for the outcome of their outline application. We will also shortly be sending out an updated version of the generalised feedback that is already published on the scheme website, with any additional points from the round 2 outline panels. You should try to address any areas that were highlighted for improvement in your notification email when developing your full stage application. So I'm now going to hand over to Jenny for the next part of the presentation.
Thank you. So good afternoon, everybody. So I will take you through an overview of the assessment journey that your application will go through from submission through to the outcome. Hilary will provide some further details of how your application will be assessed and what the project lead response involves later in this webinar. So once your application has been submitted, UKRI will check that it meets the requirements, including the eligibility of the organisations involved. We'll also check if there's been any additions to your teams so that we can manage any conflicts of interest with panel members. So your application will be assigned to 3 panel members from the Interdisciplinary Assessment College to assess your application, who we refer to as introducers. Your application will also be read by at least 2 additional panel members. Between the 21st of July and the 19th of September, each introducer will first assess your application independently before discussing it with other introducers on an online discussion board. And the purpose of this discussion is to establish any areas of your application that they would like to seek more information on to help them to make a final decision at the panel meeting. They'll also use the board to collectively decide what questions they would like to ask you ahead of the panel meeting. So between the 22nd of September and the 6th of October, you will have that opportunity to respond to the panel's questions. And once this is returned between the 7th and the 15th of October, the introducers will consider your response before submitting comments to UKRI to help us to set agendas for the meetings. And those meetings take place between the 3rd and the 6th of November, where each panel will discuss and score all of the applications, which are independently observed by roving members of our college. The panels will prioritise applications for funding through a banding process. On the 7th of November, chairs and rovers then report back on the outcomes of each panel to help us to tension across the outcomes between the panels. At this time, the introducers will also be preparing feedback on your application. Following the panels, the outcomes from each of the panel are tensioned or moderated based on the reports from the chairs and rovers. Funding is then allocated and signed off by the scheme's project board. The outcomes will be communicated by the end of November, which will include your feedback. We anticipate that if you're successful, offer letters will be sent in early January of 2026. You can find full guidance on the process in the applicant and research organisations guidance document. So panel members will consider all sections of your application in their assessment. If you have any sensitive information you wish to share with us that you don't want the panel to see, please contact us directly. There are 6 core assessment criteria that the panel will use to assess your application using the answers to the following question. So these are fit to opportunity, vision, approach, applicant and team capability to deliver, ethical and responsible research and innovation, and resources and costs justification. These criteria are not assessed or scored in isolation of each other. All criteria are used to determine a single score. So the focus of the webinar today will be on providing you with some guidance and examples of how to demonstrate these criteria, but please also refer to the opportunity information in the guidance for what panel members are looking for. Within the guidance, you'll also find more questions about a number of additional supporting questions that you may need to answer depending on the nature of your project and the people involved. If you have any questions about these optional questions, there will be time at the end of the webinar to ask, and you can always contact the team via email for support. To submit your application, please follow the link to the funding service that has been provided to you in your invitation letter. The deadline is the 3rd of July at 4 p.m. UK time. Please ensure you do allow sufficient time to submit your application, and that includes time for your organisation to check and approve it. And this is important because we cannot return submitted applications for amendment on the funding service, and that's even before the deadline has passed. So if you find you have made an error in an application that you've submitted and the deadline hasn't yet passed, you may have time to submit a new application and request that the incorrect one is withdrawn. And you need to contact the funding service help desk to do so, but also please inform the IRM team. If you find errors after the deadline has passed that you consider to be significant enough that they could impact the assessment of your application, please get in touch and we can look at your case. We are not able to accept late submissions unless under certain exceptional circumstances, such as technical issues with the funding service. If you think you have a case, a request must be made by the research office by submitting a late submission request form to the funding service help desk. The decision to allow a late submission will be under their consideration and not the programme managers of this scheme. It may be the case that since the outline stage, there's been a change in your team or circumstances within your team. Firstly, please ensure that your personal details and equality, diversity and inclusive data in your funding service profile are up to date, including project leads who should also log into their account and update their profile. This will ensure any communications that are sent automatically through the funding service or by email through our mailbox reach you, and is also to effectively monitor the diversity of the applicants who are applying to our scheme. So regarding any changes that you're aware of before the deadline, so project co-leads or collaborators can be added or removed between your outline stage and full stage, as long as you explain and justify those changes. If there is a project change in the project lead since the submission of the outline, please inform us before you submit. If any core team members move organisations or are due to move before the proposed grant start date, they should apply through the organisation they are moving to and also inform the IRM team so we can manage any subsequent conflicts of interest with any panel members. If you find after you've submitted your application that there are unexpected changes within your team, please update again your funding service profile where possible and contact the team of any changes, quoting your application number. Your application will not update on the system automatically, but if your application is successful, we will make the necessary adjustments to your award. You should inform us of any organisational changes as soon as possible, as we will need to confirm that the new organisation is supportive of your application. So in summary, please contact us for any other changes in circumstances that you think might impact the assessment of your application, or if the project is successful. So I'll now pass over back to Alex for the next part of the webinar.
Thanks very much, Jenny. So I'm now going to go through the different elements of what a good interdisciplinary project looks like. One of the key pieces of feedback from the panels is that applicants need to clearly evidence how their proposed project meets all the criteria and not just tell us, i.e. don't just repeat the assessment criteria. And I'll be going over some examples of how you may do this to really make sure your application is interdisciplinary. You should also make sure that the evidence for how your application is interdisciplinary is embedded throughout all sections of the assessment criteria and not just restricted to the fit to opportunity question, which should be a high-level summary evidencing this. So the call text for UKRI scheme asks applicants to demonstrate that they have co-created or co-designed the research project, with all the disciplines coming together to do this. We are not looking for projects where an additional discipline has been bolted on to deliver something for another discipline, and we would also like to see how the disciplines are changed or transformed by working together. Often some disciplines can be considered as service providers on a project, brought in late to a project and not included from the start, and not involved in the project framing or the research design. And they might not set the role for their discipline and can be described in quite rigid roles within a project. In cases like this, there are clear asymmetries of power within the project, and these disciplines feel like the junior partner of the project and would be considered a more multidisciplinary approach rather than interdisciplinary. We also ask you to demonstrate reciprocal benefits. Can you demonstrate that contributing different disciplines have gained something significant from the collaboration, such that the discipline's knowledge base has been changed or transformed by working with other disciplines? With interdisciplinary research, there is the emphasis on integration. Assessors will be looking for things beyond scientific excellence in the applications and drilling down into what is being integrated. Why is an integrative approach necessary? Have you made a specific case for why interdisciplinary research is necessary? Because not all research needs to be interdisciplinary. And what kind of integration is proposed and how will it be done? And do applicants have the resources, both in terms of the capacity and the organisation, to do this? I.e., how is the team going to work together to overcome the challenges of interdisciplinary research, and have they accounted for this? And therefore, what level of preparedness do participants have to undertake this type of research? So I'm just going to delve a bit deeper into each of these three elements with some examples of what this might look like. But this is not an exhaustive list, and you may have some new ideas or plans of your own, and this might look different for different disciplines. So it is about developing an approach that is appropriate for your research. So for the co-creation, co-design element of your application, you should provide evidence of what you did to create your research question together and what you plan to do to enable continuous co-development of the project. Is it building on previous research projects? Or have you had exploratory seminars and workshops between the experts from different disciplines to collaboratively explore the problems? And are you able to challenge and refine each other's ideas? What have you done or will you do to ensure that everyone appreciates the skills and expertise of the other team members, and to stimulate thinking that will lead to novel and high quality interdisciplinary solutions to the challenges as you encounter them? Are there frameworks out there that can help you do this? And what have you done to make sure that the project is defined by its interdisciplinary goals rather than those of individual disciplines? And think about how you're going to support collaboration in your writing processes to develop the proposal across disciplines. How are you going to support co-development throughout the project? How will you create an environment to allow for debate and to critique and challenge and refine each other's ideas in a safe space? And how are you going to ensure that you draw on the skills and expertise of all team members in developing a unified strategy? And what governance might you put in place to provide direction and ensure all disciplines are continue working together? When articulating the reciprocal benefits in your application, you need to demonstrate that each discipline will benefit from being part of the project. But this is not just about learning from their own discipline. It needs to be learning from engaging with other disciplines. By being part of this project, will a discipline be adopting a different approach to research or methodology from another discipline? There might also be softer skills that you can learn from each other. For example, learning how different disciplines work and their respective cultures, sharing knowledge, best practices, and approaches that will benefit each other. For example, some disciplines work as large collaborations, whereas others work as small teams, and they might also work at different speeds. So how flexible are your approaches to accommodate different ways of working? You might see your work through someone else's methods and approaches, which can build on your expertise and theirs. And there may not be equal amounts of reciprocity for every discipline, but if every discipline has some form of benefit, then no one discipline should feel like they have been bolted on to the project. As I said earlier, it's essential that you demonstrate that your application is interdisciplinary and not multidisciplinary to be a strong fit to the scheme. And one of the key elements of that is showing how the disciplines will be integrated and why it is the right approach for the research challenge or question your project is addressing. As outlined by this quote from Christian Pohl, you need to have a clear plan of how you are going to work together and outline this in your proposal. Integration will not happen passively as a byproduct of people working on the same thing, but it needs to be active, and it shouldn't be just considered as osmosis. Think about how you might manage these processes, and you can include budget to allow for these additional activities in your costs. So you need to have a clear plan to establish effective and open communications, to ensure there is shared learning and co-production of any project innovations. How are you overcoming speaking different disciplinary languages? And how will each discipline become familiar with the perspectives and tools of one another? And how are you sharing those resources and outputs? And what shared working spaces will you set up, both physical and virtual, to promote the integration and building relationships? And consider the challenges of collaborating remotely if you are not all located in the same geographical space. Do you have a framework that allows involvement of all disciplines in planning, executing, and dissemination of all work packages? What are you doing to ensure the development of methodologies will work across the disciplines? And how are the work packages being led? Are multiple disciplinary leaders assigned to lead each work package? And what are you doing to discuss and adapt to emerging findings and to co-develop the project evolution? And how are you identifying developing problems and dynamically adapting the research plan as a collective team? And how can you ensure that you actively work, avoiding the tendency for disciplinary subgroups to retreat to their respective siloed ways of working? It will be important to create a safe space promoting a culture of collaboration, valuing diverse perspectives. As a leader, how will you establish expectations and share personal aspirations of all team members? How will you enable the exploration of different ways of working? And how will you allow for constructive debate and to be able to critique the research design without discord? What framework or governance do you have to ensure equity? What will you do to ensure that you address any power dynamics that might impede communications? And who is leading the project meetings? Is this something that can be rotated? And how are compromises being made? And how will you agree on publishing outcomes? And finally, how are you supporting and developing the early career researchers or postdocs working on your project? This was one of the common strengths that the panels highlighted in round one for high scoring applications. And think about their training needs and consider how they can acquire strong interdisciplinary knowledge. Could this be through skills exchanges and attending conferences from others' fields? How can you enable the postdocs to work collaboratively across their tasks? And co-location is especially important for building relationships, but is this possible with your project? And if not, how can you better enable it? Can you have postdocs shadow each other to gain insight into the different aspects of the project? What training can be done to broaden their skill set so that they develop into truly interdisciplinary researchers? Could this be delivered through within team training? For example, could they teach one another the essential research ideas and methodologies from other disciplines, overcoming those language barriers and upskilling each other? Or are there university modules that they could attend from the other discipline to upskill them? Think about providing maybe mentors from another discipline to support their development. And overall, crucially, what are you doing to kickstart all these practices at the project initiation and to embed them going forward? So next, I'm going to go through the key assessment criteria and how these points translate into the opportunity questions for the first 3 assessment criteria, including some relevant feedback from the panels and some advice from developing your full stage application. And then I'll hand back to Jenny, who will cover the other 3 assessment criteria questions. The first assessment criteria is the fit to opportunity, which asks you to evidence how your application is interdisciplinary. This is not one of the standard UKRI assessment criteria, but specific to this scheme. Feedback from the panels was that strong applications showed clear impact from the research and why the work was only achievable through an interdisciplinary approach, that there were clear reciprocal benefits to all the disciplines, and that they had clearly articulated how the project had been co-created involving all the disciplines. Weaker applications failed to demonstrate these, and the panels considered some of the applications to be more multidisciplinary rather than interdisciplinary. Your fit to opportunity section should be a summary of the evidence of how your application fits the scheme, but they should also be elaborated on and evidenced throughout the rest of your application. Therefore, you should note that the clarification statements provided in your notification email under this heading might also apply to your vision and approach sections. And that whilst you may have articulated the fit to opportunity in this section, it was then not further evidenced in the rest of the application. As I said earlier, it's important to provide evidence of how your application is interdisciplinary and not just repeating the words of the assessment criteria. So really think about those examples that I've just given when writing your application. We have increased the word limit for this section to 300 words, giving you an extra 50 words to expand on what you've already submitted in your outline application. The second assessment criteria is the vision section, which is the first of the standard UKRI assessment criteria, but you should make sure that you articulate your vision through the lens of interdisciplinarity. Feedback from panels was that strong applications showed a clear and compelling vision for the project with genuine innovation, impact and timeliness. We recognise that this is limited to a 2-year project, but those strong applications in round 1 made it clear how the work fitted into a longer term vision, whereas weaker applications were not considered feasible within the timeframe. Just some advice on articulating the impact of your research. This scheme supports curiosity-driven research focused on advancing knowledge through to strategic and more applied areas of research, and the range of applications are assessed on an equal basis using the criteria. UKRI defines impact as the long-term unintended or unintended effect research and innovation has on society, economy, and the environment, to individuals, organisations, and the wider global population. So this includes academic impact, with demonstrable contributions to research that shifts understanding and/or advances methodologies and their applications across disciplines. But please note that you don't need to address all these types of impact in just your one project. The third assessment criteria and largest part of your application is the approach section. Again, whilst this is a standard UKRI assessment criteria, you should make sure that you outline your interdisciplinary aspects of your approach in this section and not just the fit to opportunity section. Feedback from panels was that strong applications articulated the challenges of integrating different disciplines, had a clear plan for the management and integration of the team, including career development of early career researchers, and took care over their technical language so that it was accessible to panel members covering all the disciplinary aspects of the proposal. And they also clearly identified risks and had good mitigations in place. And I will expand on risk in another slide shortly. For weaker applications, the panels noted that some applications with a strong vision did that not then demonstrate how this vision would be achieved within the approach. You should elaborate on your fit to opportunity section, explaining how you co-created the project and how you plan on continuing this throughout the lifetime of the grant. How you are integrating your disciplines, both in terms of the methodological approaches, but also in the management of the team delivering the project. Be sure to address the challenges associated with the integration of disciplines and how you plan to work through them. And be clear on any of your methods, highlighting any co-developed interdisciplinary methods. And you should also make sure how your planned approach will deliver reciprocal benefits for each of the disciplines. In your approach section, you are asked to allocate approximately 500 words to outline a strategy clearly set out as a separate section that addresses each of these points. It is really important that you ensure that your approach is interdisciplinary to be considered to have strong alignment to the scheme objectives. This schematic representation from the publication TRESS in 2005 shows the difference between singular disciplinary approaches, multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary approaches. Multidisciplinary research draws on several disciplines in parallel, but they remain separate from each other, whereas interdisciplinary research synthesizes approaches from different disciplines into a new and coherent whole. In addition, for the CRCRM scheme, if you are just applying a tool or technology from one discipline to another, but if that tool or technology is not being developed or changed or improved in any way by being part of that project, then we would not consider this interdisciplinary. And this type of research would normally be funded through a single council. For example, the application of an AI tool to a research question. So make sure your approach reflects an interdisciplinary rather than a multidisciplinary approach. Finally, just to comment on risk and how to address risks in your applications. We do want to support innovative projects, which may be seen as high risk. The risk that an idea or approach might be proven wrong, i.e. it's currently untested, is acceptable, provided that the idea being tested appears sound and that the approach is thought through. What is important to do is clearly identify any risks and outline what your mitigation plans are for the risks in the approach section. In the capability to deliver section, you should also evidence the feasibility to deliver the project in terms of the skills, expertise, and resources within the team. And the panel will be trained that a direct track record of past research on any area may not exist, particularly where new teams are brought together in order to explore new areas. So I'm now going to hand back to Jenny to cover the rest of the assessment criteria.
Hello, so the fourth assessment criteria is capability to deliver. So this section is your opportunity to demonstrate why your team is the best people to lead, manage and deliver the proposed work. So this section should be formatted using the UKRI Resume for Research and Innovation, or R4RI for short, which is a narrative CV template used in all UKRI funding opportunities. It's a framework of 4 modules that have been designed to allow you to demonstrate a wider range of skills and experience of your team as a whole compared to traditional academic CVs. So this section should be answered as a narrative, but we understand that sometimes it's easier to have lists or bullet points, and these are allowed where context is given. Please note that the assessors are not assessing how well you structure these modules. They are assessing whether the team has the capability to deliver the proposed work that you're proposing. So from feedback from round 1, we have increased the word limit to 2,000 words for the main R4I modules and references, and you have the flexibility on how you use this allocation across the modules. A further optional 500 words can be used for additional section, which allows the team to give additional context, such as career breaks, that you may wish to explain to the panel. The published R4I template on the UKRI website does suggest the use of a table for you to summarise all team members at the top of the section. It might be helpful for you to refer to this in your answer, particularly where there are additional people in your team who are not listed under your core team section, but you would like to include in this section. However, the table is not a requirement, but if you do use it, please note that it does count towards the word limit for this section. Make it clear in this section what research partners you are working with and the roles that they have, how active they are, and whether they're part of the delivery team or in an advisory role. If they're part of the delivery team, you should make sure to include this in your strategy for integrating the disciplines in your approach section. If you'd like further guidance or examples on how best to demonstrate your team's skills and experience using a narrative CV, you may find the peer exchange platform for narrative style CVs helpful, which shares best practice and has been developed in partnership between the R&I community and funding agencies across the sector. The fifth assessment criteria concerns the ethical and responsible research considerations you should demonstrate that you have identified and evaluated and how you will manage them. You should answer this question even if you do not think that your proposed work raises any ethical or RFI issues, and explaining why. Related to this question are also a number of additional ethics questions that you may need to answer depending on the nature of your project, and further instructions on these are provided in the guidance document. For what the standards of responsible research are, you should refer to UKRI's key ethical principles and supporting resources on the Good Research Resource Hub. Here you can also find information on trusted research and innovation, which is a separate mandatory question in the application if you have any international partners. So the final core assessment criteria is the justification of resources and costs that you're requesting in your budget. So panel members are looking for you to demonstrate how the resources you anticipate needing for your proposed work are comprehensive, appropriate, and justified, and represent the optimal use of resources, as well as maximising potential outcomes and impacts. Panel members are not expecting a detailed costs or line-by-line breakdown. However, you should be clear in your justifications if you're providing figures for single items or totals of multiple items, especially when referring to equipment in particular. Please check that you have not included any costs that we do not fund. Any such items will be removed if awarded and can delay the process of receiving your offer letter. I'd now like to take a bit of time to highlight a couple of questions that could be relevant if you're working with project partners. So the first is the project partner question that asks you to provide details of all your partners, including those from industry, academia, third sector or government organisations, both in the UK or overseas. We define a project partner as a collaborating organisation who will have an integral role in your proposed research, whether that is contributions in cash or in kind. If your research project involves an industry or company project partner, you'll also need to answer a second question on intellectual property management and communication, which asks you to outline how the IP associated with the project will be managed. And by industry or company, we mean an enterprise that puts goods or services on a market and whose commercial activities are greater than 20% of their overall annual capacity. This question is there to ensure that the necessary discussions have been initiated prior to any collaboration and that the nature of the collaboration is compliant with the UKRI guidelines for subsidy control. So your answer should include information on the nature, goals and conditions of the collaboration and any restrictions or rights to the project results that could be claimed by the project partner. You should speak to your research organisation's departments responsible for setting up collaboration agreements as soon as possible if you think you need to answer this question. We do not need any letters of support to be submitted from project partners. However, if the industry or company project partner are contributing financially to the grant and they expect to have access to the project outcomes in advance of publication, the applicants will need to submit a formal collaboration agreement if the award is made. Please see the guidance for further details. So before I pass you on to Hilary to explain a bit more about your application and how it will be assessed, we'd just like to remind you to read the opportunity requirements carefully and to check that you've addressed all the requirements in your application before you submit it. As Alex said, we'll send these slides to you after this webinar, and it will include at the end of the slide deck some further resources, including a checklist that we hope you will find useful to ensure that all those requirements are met. So please do look at these slides afterwards, and if you have any further questions, please get in touch. So I'll now pass you over to Hilary.
Thank you, Jenny. I'm Hilary McNeil, and I'm now going to take you through the assessment process, as Jenny says, including the project lead response stage. So we will perform some checks on your application when it's submitted. We'll then send your application to the 3 introducers who have been assigned thoroughly to read and independently assess your application before the panel meeting. Of these, 2 will have relevant experience to the proposed work, and 1 will have a more generalist experience. At the panel meeting itself, they will introduce it to the whole panel and lead discussions. It will also be sent to 2 panel readers so that they have additional familiarity with it for engaging in discussions in depth at the panel meeting. The introducers will assess your application against the assessment criteria, and they will firstly submit their independent comments to UKRI, and then on an online discussion board, they will read the comments of the other 2 introducers and discuss them. These individuals will collectively compile some feedback and questions to project leads against each criterion for the project leads to respond to. And this piece of feedback will be agreed with the chair of the panel before it is sent to project leads. You should receive comments and questions on the 22nd of September via the funding service, and you have until the 6th of October to respond to these, and you can submit up to 1,500 words in your response. The applicant's opportunity to respond is a key stage in the application process, so do please make sure that you are aware of this PL response window and plan to be available to respond. Please also be aware that if a response is not received in this period, your application will proceed to the panel for discussion without it, as panel members need sufficient time to review it before the meeting. If your project lead is not available to respond, you can nominate a co-lead named on the application to respond in your absence. The co-lead will need to contact your research office to enter the response into the funding service, so they should ensure that they make a timely arrangement to do this. It will be possible for you to include images in your response, but we advise you to use the 1,500 word limit wisely to clearly respond to the questions and feedback, and use the images sparingly. Also, as with your main application, you should only use hyperlinks for reference information. Still on the subject of your project lead response, I want to emphasise the importance of this in your application. This is your opportunity to provide further clarity for the panel in the areas that they have raised with you, and your response forms an important part of your overall application, as it is critical in helping the panel to make their final decisions. The assessors will consider how well you've rebutted comments and addressed questions. When responding, please remember that the assessors have provided the feedback and requests for further clarity in good faith to help you present your case at its best. They are not in any way trying to catch you out. Their questions will be in areas where they need further clarity from what is provided already, or reassurance that you have fully considered challenges in performing your interdisciplinary project, and your answers will help them to make their final decision. We've included here some tips on how to respond. There's no need to repeat panel member comments, but do be clear which point you are responding to. Keep a neutral tone, however strongly you may feel about a comment. The assessors will have made the comment based on the information presented to them, as well as their own knowledge or experience. Focus on answering all questions and/or addressing any issues. It may be that the assessors have misinterpreted your project, and this is your opportunity to provide the missing information that would help them, or to explain it in a clearer way. Be specific in your comments to make the assessor's role as straightforward as possible. Avoid rewriting your application or just referring back to the relevant section in your application without elaborating further to address the question or concern. The assessors will already have read this and will have given a lot of consideration to the question that they asked you. Before the panel meeting, the introducers will have had time to review your project lead response, so that at the meeting they are well prepared to present their independent assessments to your application, to the whole panel, taking account of all the evidence, including your response. This will enable the panel as a whole to assess the quality of your proposed work and how best it meets the scheme's objectives, scoring it against the assessment criteria. Remember that they will consider all assessment criteria in scoring your application, and these will all be equally weighted and not scored individually. The panel will reach one single consensus score, taking account of all criteria. You can find more information on scoring definitions in our guidance document. Applications are clustered into interdisciplinary panels. The interfaces between 5 research domains provide the framework to form 10 interdisciplinary clusters that panels will be based on. Panel membership is made of a chair and deputy chair or co-chairs and panel members, all from the Trained Interdisciplinary Assessment College. And as I've mentioned, the panel members will all have been assigned applications as introducing members on specific applications and may also be assigned as readers on others. Each session of the panel is observed by at least one external rover. These are also members of the Trained Interdisciplinary Assessment College, and they will be familiar with the scheme objectives and with the assessment process, and will be able to flag whether there are inconsistencies in how the panels they observe have applied the assessment criteria. Also present will be UKRI staff to convene and support panel meetings, ensuring that UKRI policies are adhered to, and at least one internal UKRI rover will also be present. After all panels have met, chairs and rovers will report back to a tensioning meeting where banding outcomes from across the panels will be moderated. I'm now going to explain the banding of applications by each panel. So after all applications in a panel have been discussed and scored, the panel must reach a consensus on prioritising applications so that they can make recommendations to UKRI. And this is done via a banding process. Applications that can be considered of similar quality are banded together through bands A to D, based on the definitions in this table. And this allows for the comparison of quality across all panels. The banding process is observed by rovers. At the full stage, after all applications have been banded, the panels will be able to allocate a proportion of applications to an A-star band, which guarantees funding to the highest quality applications. These applications would be judged to be outstanding or exceptional and clearly distinguishable from others. Panels don't have to use this A-star band if they're unable to identify one or more exceptional applications within the proportion that they're allowed. So panels must submit their scores and bandings to UKRI after panel meetings, and then there are 3 steps to confirming the outcome of applications. So the first is the tensioning meeting, which I've mentioned, and this is where panel chairs and rovers must report back to UKRI. Chairs will report on how their panel applied the scheme criteria and reached decisions, justifications for their banding outcomes, and also they'll report on any challenges they encountered in reaching consensus. Rovers will report on the consistency of how the scoring and banding definitions were applied in the 3 panels they each observed. And this is a key element in this cross-council interdisciplinary scheme, where we may see different approaches to the assessment of different disciplinary groupings. Both rovers and chairs will be able to report on any applications that they feel did not receive a fair hearing or consistent approach, and whether any bias may consciously or unconsciously have been applied, which they may believe affected the final outcome. The next step is for us to present banding data to our project board for approval, based on these panel recommendations and the feedback from the tensioning meeting. The A-star banded applications are guaranteed funding. Then subsequent bands are funded until the budget is spent. In round 1, we were able to fund A-stars and then applied a randomisation approach to all applications in the A band, where there were more than we could fund. This ensured that all funded applications had met or exceeded a quality threshold and were of the highest standards. If we do apply a partial randomisation approach in round 2, it will again be based on these principles of meeting a high quality threshold. The third step is a joint meeting of the project board and panel chairs, where outcomes will be presented to the panel chairs for comment before the final awards are made. We'll communicate outcomes of your application by the end of November, and with your outcome letter, you'll receive feedback which has been compiled by the introducers for your application and will reflect panel discussions. If you've been successful, we'll follow this up with more instructions on what will happen next, and we'll request additional information from you, such as the letters of support from commercial project partners. At this point, we'll also be performing more in-depth post-panel checks on costings, and we may request further clarification on these and also on use of any facilities, if these are part of your application. We'll also want to confirm if there have been any changes that need to be applied to the award, as Jenny mentioned. For example, if a core team member has moved organisation, we'll want to be assured that the team's capability to deliver the project in line with its aims and objectives has not in any way been compromised, and we will ask for supporting letters to confirm this. We anticipate that offer letters will be sent in early January 26, and grants will need to start within 6 months of the official offer letter date and must be started by the 1st of July 2026. If your project involves project partners, we will provide details to explain in what circumstances you need to submit any collaboration agreements to us. And if applicable, these will need to be submitted within the first 6 months of the grant. Our guidance provides more information about these, and it's wise to check this in your early conversations with project partners. So I'll just show you some important dates, but as we've said, we'll be sharing these slides with you so you'll be able to lock these in. But the two that I want to draw out to you are in bold there, the 3rd of July 2025 at 4 p.m. our time, a closing date for full stage applications, and then the project lead response window, the 22nd of September to the 6th of October. So I will now hand back to Alex, and I think we've got time for some questions.
Yes, thanks, Hilary. So that is the end of the presentations, and we will now move on to the question and answer session.